The sky was quiet, too quiet. It had been a regular day on Earth, with people going about their routines, unaware of the storm that was about to hit them. But then, everything changed. A massive shape appeared in the sky, so large that it seemed to block out the sun. At first, people thought it was a plane, maybe a new military aircraft. But it wasn't that. It was a ship, an alien ship, unlike anything humanity had ever seen before. It was enormous, a dark shadow against the bright blue sky. Its surface shimmered with an eerie glow, and the sharp angles made it look more like a weapon than a vehicle. The world watched, frozen in fear and curiosity. People took out their phones, recording the moment, but no one could comprehend what was happening. The ship didn't just hover. It loomed, as if it was waiting for something. Minutes passed. Then, a voice crackled through the global communication systems. A calm, cold voice echoed from every device. "We come in peace," it said, though there was no warmth in the words. "Submit, or be destroyed." The world fell silent. The message was clear, and it sent chills down everyone's spine. A cold, calculating race had arrived, and Earth was nothing but a target. The voice didn't leave room for doubt. Humanity was powerless before them. Panic spread quickly. Governments scrambled to respond, military leaders gathered in secret, and ordinary people feared the worst. How could they defend themselves against an enemy that had traveled across the stars? How could they fight against technology that seemed so far beyond their own? The alien ship didn't move for hours. It simply hovered above the Earth, waiting. It was as if it was daring humanity to react. The tension grew. In cities across the world, people stared at the sky, some praying, others trying to make sense of the impossible situation. Across the globe, governments issued statements, trying to assure their citizens that everything was under control. But no one believed them. In the streets, people whispered, their eyes turned upward, terrified. What did this alien race want? Was humanity really just a prize to be claimed? Then came the first sign of aggression. Without warning, the alien ship released a series of strange beams of light. They weren't lasers, but something more terrifying. The beams cut through buildings, melting steel and concrete in an instant. Entire cities crumbled beneath the force of the attack. No bombs, no missiles, just a light that destroyed everything in its path. It was as if Earth had no defense against this new kind of power. For hours, there was only chaos. People ran, hid, and did whatever they could to survive. But it was clear that humanity's forces stood no chance. Fighter jets launched into the sky, but they were like ants attacking a giant. One by one, they were struck down. Their technology nothing compared to the alien ship's advanced weaponry. In the midst of the chaos, one thought kept racing through every mind. How could Earth stop this? How could humanity fight back? But even in the darkest moments, there was a glimmer of hope. Humanity was known for one thing: it was resilient. From the ashes of disaster, the greatest battles were often born. The alien fleet had made a mistake. They thought humanity was weak. They thought humans were just another species to conquer. Little did they know, Earth had its own surprises hidden deep within. And in that moment of terror, while the alien ships continued to rain destruction on the planet, humanity's greatest strength began to stir. The fight was far from over, but for now, all they could do was watch as the skies filled with the looming alien ships, their shadows darkening the Earth below. The first encounter had begun, and the world would never be the same again. The days that followed were filled with chaos. The world had changed overnight. Governments scrambled to find answers, but the truth was undeniable. Earth was under attack. The aliens had come with overwhelming force, and humanity was left reeling. From the destruction, what had once been familiar was now a war zone, as cities lay in ruins and countless lives were lost in the blink of an eye. In the aftermath of the first attack, there was a sense of paralysis. People watched from their windows, their hearts heavy with fear and confusion. The alien ships hovered over every major city, their enormous forms blocking out the sun. The fear was palpable, spreading faster than the disease, as it seemed no one was safe. There was no place to hide, no refuge to escape to. The invaders were everywhere. The military's response was swift, but ultimately futile. Fighter jets were launched into the sky, their engines roaring, but they were no match for the alien fleet. One by one, they were shot down, their metal bodies falling from the sky in flames. The alien ships didn't even need to move. The advanced technology rendered Earth's best weapons powerless. The world's military leaders, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves powerless against an enemy they couldn't even comprehend. In the midst of this uncertainty, one question lingered. What did the aliens want? What was their end goal? The voice that had spoken over the airwaves had been calm, detached, as if it had already decided humanity's fate. It had promised peace, but there had been no sign of it. Instead, they were met with devastation and death. And now, the aliens' presence above the Earth made it clear, this was not an offer of peace, but a statement of power. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, there was a strange sense of unity forming among Earth's people. The alien threat had forced humanity to come together. Governments that had once bickered over borders and resources now shared intelligence and resources. Citizens from every corner of the globe set aside their differences, realizing that the only way to survive was to fight as one. A network of resistance groups began to emerge, born from the ashes of chaos. Ordinary people who had never imagined themselves in a war found themselves joining forces to protect their homes. They were engineers, scientists, and military veterans, all coming together with a singular purpose: to find a way to fight back. Among them was a team of scientists who had been working on a top-secret project for years, a project that had been dismissed by the government as far too ambitious, but now, in the wake of the alien attack, it became the world's last hope. It was a weapon unlike anything the world had ever seen, a weapon that could take the fight to the aliens. The scientists worked tirelessly, their minds focused solely on one goal: creating a defense system capable of standing against the alien ships. Days turned into weeks as they toiled, their nerves frayed from the constant stress and the weight of the world on their shoulders. But despite the odds, they made progress. The weapon was far from perfect, but it was their best chance. Meanwhile, the alien ships remained in the sky, their cold, calculating presence a constant reminder of the threat that loomed over the planet. Their advanced technology was beyond anything Earth could have imagined. Each ship seemed to pulse with energy, as if alive, feeding off the power of the cosmos. The aliens didn't need to invade, they were already here. They had already conquered. But even as Earth's forces prepared for what seemed like a hopeless battle, the mood shifted. It wasn't just fear that filled the streets, it was determination. People, ordinary people, began to take matters into their own hands. They fought back in small but significant ways. They sabotaged the alien technology, hacked into their communication systems, and made the aliens aware that they were not dealing with a defenseless planet. For the first time since the invasion began, there was a crack in the aliens' confidence. The invasion had gone smoothly at first, but now Earth was showing signs of resistance. Small victories were being achieved, and the aliens didn't know how to respond. What they had thought would be an easy conquest had turned into something more complicated. Humanity's will to survive, to protect what was theirs, was far stronger than they had anticipated. Still, the reality of the situation was clear. Humanity had no chance against the might of the alien fleet. The alien ships were too powerful, their technology too advanced. No weapon on Earth could compare. But as the resistance gained momentum, there was a new sense of hope. People were beginning to believe that they could fight back, even if the odds were stacked against them. The situation had become dire, and every passing hour seemed to bring more destruction. Yet, amid the devastation, something unexpected happened. The first wave of the alien fleet had come, and it had attacked with overwhelming force. But as they began to understand that Earth was not going to surrender quietly, the aliens began to realize that they had underestimated humanity. They were not dealing with a species that would fall at their feet. Earth was different. Humanity would fight to the last breath, and that was something the aliens hadn't counted on. The aliens had seen planets fall before, civilizations crushed beneath their feet, but they had never faced a species that refused to give up, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed. It was this unyielding spirit that would be the spark. It was the human resilience, the refusal to accept defeat, that would turn the tide. Slowly, Earth began to find its strength, and the resistance began to grow. The first steps had been taken, but the real battle was still to come. As the days turned into weeks, Earth's fight for survival evolved. The alien ships had proven themselves to be indomitable, but humanity, in its raw determination, refused to be crushed under the weight of an invasion that seemed impossible to overcome. In secret laboratories and underground bunkers, scientists and engineers pushed the boundaries of what was possible, working tirelessly to develop weapons and strategies that could level the playing field, even if just a little. Though the aliens' presence in the skies had brought about widespread devastation, it had also ignited something within humanity, a fire that would not be easily extinguished. People from all walks of life, once divided by borders, politics, and resources, were now united in their resolve to push back. Nations that had been on the brink of conflict suddenly put aside their differences to fight a common enemy. The world had become one not out of choice, but out of necessity. But the aliens didn't care about unity. They didn't care about the human spirit. They had come to conquer, and for them, it was simply a matter of time. They believed that the destruction they had unleashed was just the beginning of what would be an easy victory. The truth was, they had underestimated the resilience of humanity. It wasn't just the military that stood up. Ordinary citizens, people who had never even held a weapon before, started forming their own resistance groups. They were fighters, not by training, but by sheer willpower. They sabotaged alien supply lines, attacked their communication networks, and created chaos where there had once been order. While these small acts of rebellion seemed insignificant compared to the might of the alien fleet, they carried a powerful message, the message that Earth wasn't done yet. One such group, led by an engineer named Riley, managed to infiltrate an alien communication relay. It was a daring move, but it worked. For the first time since the invasion, humans were able to intercept alien transmissions. Learning about their strategies and their weaknesses, the small victory was a beacon of hope, and it spread like wildfire across the globe. It wasn't long before humanity began to understand the aliens' weaknesses. Framed, perhaps, that the invaders could be flawed in such a fundamental way. The key to their defeat lay not in the technology they wielded, but in their arrogance. They had believed that no one could stand against them. They had believed that their superior firepower, their advanced weaponry, would be enough to crush Earth without resistance. But what they hadn't counted on was humanity's ability to adapt, to fight back in ways that didn't rely on sheer firepower. Meanwhile, across the globe, governments began to secretly deploy their hidden weapons. The military-industrial complex, once focused on conventional warfare, had now pivoted to counter the alien threat. Every nation contributed, pooling resources and sharing intelligence. What was once a fractured world now found strength in collaboration. The weapons humanity developed were nothing like the alien ships, but they were effective in their own right. Each weapon was designed to target a specific weakness in the alien fleet's technology, and while the aliens were advanced, they were not invincible. But while Earth's scientists and military worked to create new weapons, something unexpected was happening on the front line. The alien fleet, although overwhelmingly powerful, was beginning to show signs of hesitation. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but there were cracks forming in their confidence. The small rebellions, the sabotage, and the resistance they had faced on the ground had started to erode their sense of invincibility, and then came the turning point. In the dead of night, a massive explosion rocked one of the alien motherships. It wasn't a fluke, it was a well-planned strike by a coordinated group of resistance fighters. The aliens, who had once believed that their ships were invulnerable, were now facing real damage. The explosion sent shockwaves through their fleet, causing panic among their ranks. It wasn't enough to win the war, but it was enough to make them realize that Earth was no longer an easy target. The aliens retaliated quickly, but their response was more desperate than calculated. They launched a series of devastating attacks on Earth's major cities, but even as they unleashed their fury, they seemed to be fighting not just for control, but to maintain their pride. They had come to conquer, but now, they were afraid. For the first time, they saw humans not as a species to be wiped out, but as a species that could stand against them, perhaps even defeat them. In the aftermath of the explosion, the mood on Earth shifted. The initial fear that had paralyzed the planet was now replaced by something stronger: determination. Humanity had fought back, and though it was still a long way from victory, the battle had begun. The aliens, with all their advanced technology and weapons, had failed to break the human spirit. They had underestimated humanity's will to survive. Riley and his team watched the alien ships retreating in the sky, their once immense confidence shattered. It wasn't just a victory for the resistance, it was a victory for the entire planet. The aliens, though they still outmatched humanity in firepower, were now uncertain. They had seen the strength of the human will. They had seen what Earth was capable of when pushed to the brink. The fight was far from over, but humanity had proven something crucial: that they were not a species to be easily conquered. The aliens had made a grave mistake in thinking that one fleet was enough to terrify humanity. Earth was just beginning to show what it could do, and as the dust settled, Riley and his team knew that the coming days would be filled with even greater challenges, but they were ready. Earth had been pushed to the edge, but it had not fallen, and it would not fall, not today, not ever. The ground trembled beneath the feet of the survivors, as if Earth itself was trying to regain its balance. The first wave of alien destruction had left scars that would take decades to heal, but amidst the ruins, a new sense of purpose began. to rise. It was clear now that the aliens had underestimated humanity. What had seemed like an unstoppable force was starting to falter. Despite the overwhelming odds, people had found the strength to fight back, and that was something the invaders could not have predicted. In the aftermath of the attack, the world's resistance had shifted from a scattered group of survivors to a unified force. Every nation, every city, every person who had survived had a single goal now: to take the fight back to the aliens. The military, once scattered and broken, had begun to regroup. The people who had been lost in the chaos were no longer just survivors, they were fighters. But they knew they couldn't do it alone. They needed something more, something that could match the power of the alien fleet. Riley's team had worked day and night on the new weapon. They had realized something important: humanity couldn't win by fighting fire with fire. They couldn't rely solely on technology. The aliens had that covered, and it was clear that their advanced weaponry was nearly invincible. Instead, they had to think differently. They had to find a way to use the one thing the aliens couldn't control: humanity's ingenuity, its unpredictability, and its raw willpower. The team's breakthrough came in the form of a system that allowed Earth's forces to exploit the weaknesses in the alien ships. The weapon they had created wasn't a bomb, nor was it a traditional missile. It was something much more subtle. It was designed to infiltrate and manipulate the alien fleet's communication systems. Earth's greatest strength lay not in brute force, but in its ability to outthink the invaders, to turn their own technology against them. The plan was risky, but the stakes couldn't have been higher. If they succeeded, the aliens would be blindsided. If they failed, humanity's last hope would crumble, and Earth would be left defenseless against an overwhelming enemy. The teams of hackers and engineers, working from the shadows, initiated the attack. They breached the alien communication channels, sending out a virus that would distort the fleet's command structure, causing confusion and chaos. It was a long shot, but the team had done everything they could to prepare. The world held its breath. As the virus began to spread through the alien fleet's network, the first signs of success became apparent. The alien ships that had once moved with flawless precision began to drift, their movements erratic. Their coordinated attacks faltered, their weapons misfiring in random directions. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The aliens were losing control. They had relied too heavily on their technology, and now, it was their own downfall. For the first time since the invasion, they were vulnerable. The resistance saw the opportunity and struck. Ground forces, once hesitant and afraid, now surged forward with renewed vigor. They launched attacks on the alien forces, taking advantage of the disarray that had been caused. It wasn't a victory yet, but the first real sign that the tide was beginning to turn. Earth wasn't just fighting back, it was starting to outsmart the aliens. Across the globe, humanity took note of the shift. Resistance groups, once fragmented and scattered, now united with a single purpose. Every nation, from the largest superpowers to the smallest communities, offered support. They rallied together, pooling their resources, knowledge, and manpower in ways that hadn't been seen before. Humanity had always been a species divided by borders, but now, those borders had blurred. The only thing that mattered was survival, and the world was fighting to ensure that it would. In the cities that had been reduced to rubble, there were glimmers of hope. People, once hiding in fear, began to rebuild, to organize. They didn't just want to survive, they wanted to fight back. They were no longer content to live in the shadow of the alien ships. They would take the fight to the invaders, with everything they had. It wasn't just about retaliation, it was about showing the aliens that humanity was far more than they had bargained for. But the aliens were not an easy foe. As the confusion spread through their fleet, they quickly adapted. The command structure, though shaken, was not entirely broken. The alien forces, while initially thrown off balance, regained their composure and began regrouping. The respite that humanity had earned would be short-lived. The aliens' response was swift and brutal. They unleashed an attack that was even more destructive than before, targeting the resistance with devastating force. Yet, even in the face of this new wave of destruction, humanity stood firm. The resolve that had been forged in the fires of battle became stronger with each blow. They knew they had only one chance to make this work, and they would not let it slip away. As the world braced for the next assault, Riley and his team worked tirelessly to adjust their strategy, to find a way to outmaneuver the aliens once again. They had done it once, and they would do it again. The fight for Earth was far from over. But now, it was clear to the aliens and to humanity alike. Earth was not a planet to be easily conquered. It was a planet that would fight for its survival with everything it had. The first steps had been taken, but the real war was only just beginning. The alien fleet had underestimated humanity's will to fight, and that was something they would regret. The alien fleet, once towering and unassailable, now showed signs of instability. The virus that had infected their communication network was a mere crack in their armor, but it was enough to let the fear seep in. The aliens, who had believed they could wipe out humanity with a single strike, had now discovered something they had never anticipated: resistance, and it was growing stronger with each passing day. Earth's first major victory had come not in the form of a single, decisive battle, but through a series of smaller, smarter tactics. It was the unpredictability of human ingenuity that had given them an edge. Earth didn't have the advanced technology to rival the aliens in sheer firepower, but humanity had something far more potent: its capacity to adapt, to think, and to surprise. As the resistance groups continued to grow in numbers and strength, something remarkable began to happen. The human spirit, once fragmented by the alien onslaught, was now united in a shared purpose. People who had once been afraid to speak up, to act, now found themselves playing pivotal roles in the fight. Engineers, doctors, scientists, and even artists all came together, offering their skills to the resistance. It wasn't just about fighting the aliens anymore, it was about showing the world that humanity would not bow down. But the alien forces were not idle. They had begun to regroup, recalibrate, and adapt their strategy. They were a species of supreme intelligence, and they weren't about to lose to a species they had once considered inferior. Despite their momentary slip, they were now fighting back with renewed determination. Their next move would be decisive, or so they believed. It was at this moment that Riley's team made a breakthrough, one that would change the course of the war. After weeks of studying alien technology, they had found a way to bypass their energy shields. The shields that had once rendered humanity's weapons useless were now vulnerable to a new kind of energy pulse, one that didn't rely on brute force, but instead exploited the alien ship's own weaknesses. The team had perfected the pulse and was ready to launch it. But there was one problem. The aliens were learning quickly, and they were already preparing a countermeasure. The race was on. The resistance had one shot to turn the tide, and it had to be done quickly before the aliens could adapt to the new weapon. The global atmosphere was tense, but there was no turning back. The plan was set in motion, and Riley's team, along with resistance forces from across the planet, began to coordinate the strike. The fate of Earth now rested on the success of a single, coordinated attack. The timing had to be perfect. Earth's military forces had to draw the alien ships into the right position, and then Riley's team would deploy the energy pulse. It was a dangerous gamble, and even Riley wasn't sure it would work. But the alternative was unthinkable. If they failed, humanity's last hope would crumble, and Earth would be at the mercy of the alien invaders. As the resistance forces moved into position, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Thousands of eyes were on the skies, watching as the alien fleet moved into range. The tension was thick, and every heartbeat felt like it was echoing across the globe. The countdown had begun. The alien fleet, unaware of the trap being set for them, continued their course. They had begun to encircle the planet, slowly tightening their grip. Their ships were too massive to be stopped by any conventional means, and yet, they had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to think outside the box, to see beyond the obvious. The moment came. Riley's team activated the energy pulse, sending a wave of power toward the alien fleet. The pulse hit the first ship, and the impossible happened. The alien ship, once impervious to attack, began to shudder. Its shields flickered, and the protective barriers that had once seemed unbreachable began to fail. The energy pulse tore through their defenses like paper, and the ship began to break apart. It wasn't just one ship. As the pulse spread, it affected each alien vessel in its path. Their shields fell, their weapons misfired, and the once fleet was thrown into chaos. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth had gained the upper hand. The aliens were scrambling, their ships retreating in disarray, trying to figure out what had just happened. On the ground, the resistance erupted into celebration. People hugged, cheered, and cried. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. Humanity had just done the impossible. They had fought back against an overwhelming enemy, and they had won. But even as the victory began to sink in, Riley and his team knew that this was not the end. The alien fleet was not destroyed. They had only been wounded, and the invaders would not go down without a fight. The victory was crucial, but it was just the beginning. The pulse had disrupted the alien fleet, but the war was far from over. The aliens, humiliated by their defeat, would regroup. They would come back stronger, more ruthless. Earth had won a battle, but the war was still very much alive. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity had found its strength, it had found its voice, and it was not going to be silenced again. As the resistance prepared for the next wave, Riley stood before his team. They had just achieved what many thought impossible, but the real test was yet to come. They had shaken the alien invaders, and they had given the world something invaluable: hope. And hope, as they knew all too well, was the most powerful weapon of all. The first victory had sent shockwaves through the alien fleet, but the relief was short-lived. Earth's forces, emboldened by their success, had only just begun to understand the full scale of the challenge they faced. The pulse that had crippled the alien ships was a powerful weapon, yes, but it was also a signal. The aliens were not finished. The first taste of victory had given humanity the confidence to believe they could win, but it was a fragile hope, one that could easily be shattered. The alien fleet, now regrouping, began to adapt to the new threat. Their once perfect coordination had fractured, but their arrogance had not wavered. The leaders of the alien forces had underestimated humanity's resilience, but they had learned from their mistakes. They understood now that Earth wasn't just a collection of weak, frightened beings. They were a species capable of unexpected brilliance, and that had made them dangerous. But the aliens still had one crucial advantage: their technology. They had perfected weapons that Earth could only dream of, and they would use that power to crush humanity's rebellion. In secret bunkers around the world, humanity's leaders were already preparing for the next phase of the war. The initial euphoria of victory began to fade, replaced by the grim reality that the alien threat was far from over. There were whispers of a larger, more powerful fleet coming to reinforce the alien forces, a fleet that could crush Earth's newfound hope in an instant. The resistance knew they had no time to waste. Every day counted. Riley and his team worked tirelessly to develop new tactics and weapons. The energy pulse had proven effective, but it was a one-time solution. They needed something more, something that would force the aliens to rethink their strategy. The breakthrough came in the form of an ancient technology, one that had been hidden beneath the surface of Earth for centuries. It was a relic of a time long forgotten, but its potential was enormous. Humanity had stumbled upon it by accident, but now it was the key to turning the tide. This ancient technology, buried deep within Earth's crust, was capable of disrupting the alien ship's propulsion systems. If activated in the right place and at the right time, it could cripple the fleet's ability to move, leaving them stranded in space. The problem was that the technology was unstable, and activating it could cause catastrophic damage to Earth itself. It was a gamble, but the Resistance knew they had no other choice. They had to take the risk. As the days passed, the alien fleet began its assault once more, launching devastating strikes on Earth's remaining cities. The attacks were precise, calculated, and relentless. The alien ships moved with terrifying efficiency, their weapons cutting through the last remnants of human defense like a hot knife through butter. For a moment, it seemed like Earth's last stand was inevitable. It felt like the end, but even as the cities fell, humanity refused to give up. There was something in the air, now a spark, a fire that couldn't be extinguished. The idea that Earth would simply surrender was no longer an option. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, but they had also discovered something powerful: unity. People from every corner of the globe, from every background, found themselves coming together, pooling their knowledge and resources for one purpose: to stop the alien invaders. The scientists who had worked so long in isolation now found themselves leading the charge. The military, once divided, now moved as one, coordinating with unprecedented precision. The Resistance had grown from a collection of ragtag groups into a formidable force. They had learned from their mistakes and adapted quickly. The alien fleet had underestimated them once, and they wouldn't make the same mistake again. Riley, standing on the edge of humanity's last hope, watched as the team prepared the ancient technology for activation. The countdown was ticking. They had one shot. The plan was set in motion, and with each passing second, the tension grew. The alien fleet was coming closer, their ships looming on the horizon, their weapons primed. But they didn't know what was coming for them. The pulse began to emit from the ancient technology, a low hum that grew louder with each passing moment. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The alien ships, moving at full speed, suddenly came to a screeching halt. The disruption in their propulsion systems caused their once mighty fleet to falter. For a moment, everything went still. The alien ships, crippled and unable to move, were now sitting targets for Earth's forces. The Resistance wasted no time. Ground forces launched their attack, hitting the alien ships with everything they had. Missiles, laser beams, and new weapons powered by human ingenuity tore into the alien fleet. It wasn't a perfect victory, but it was enough. The alien invaders, so sure of their dominance, now found themselves fighting for their very survival. Their ships, once invulnerable, were now falling, one by one, as humanity's forces began to reclaim what had been lost. For a moment, Riley allowed himself a brief moment of triumph. They had done it. The aliens had been pushed back, and for the first time since the invasion began, Earth had the upper hand. But as the alien ships fell from the sky, Riley couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The alien fleet had been crippled, yes, but the war was far from over. They would regroup, they would learn from their mistakes, and when they returned, they would come back stronger, angrier, and more determined. But Riley wasn't worried. Humanity had shown its strength. The aliens had underestimated them once, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. Earth had proven something, that no matter how strong the enemy, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed, humanity would never give up. And as the dust settled, Riley knew that this was only the beginning of a long, hard war. But Earth had found its strength, and that was something the aliens would never take away. The battle had raged for months, the cost in lives and resources almost beyond reckoning. The alien fleet, once so confident, had now been shattered. Its most powerful ships crippled and scattered across the expanse of space. Earth had taken a great leap forward, but the price was steep. Cities lay in ruins, and the survivors, though victorious, wore the weight of their losses heavily. Yet, amidst the destruction, there was a shared understanding. Humanity had tasted what it was capable of. They had faced annihilation and fought back with everything they had, and they were not done yet. The aliens, however, had not given up. The first wave of defeat had humbled them, but they had retreated, regrouped, and now they were preparing for something far worse. A fleet, larger and more menacing than the first, was on its way. Intelligence gathered by humanity suggested that this would be no ordinary assault. The aliens had learned from their previous mistakes and were coming back with strategies that Earth's forces were not prepared for. But Riley, standing at the heart of the global resistance, refused to back down. The victory they had won, though significant, was only a taste of what was to come. He knew the fight was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. There was a fire in him, in all of them, that wouldn't be extinguished. If the aliens thought they could crush humanity with a second wave of destruction, they were gravely mistaken. This time, humanity was ready. As the new alien fleet drew closer, Earth's defense systems were revamped, new weapons designed, and human ingenuity brought to the forefront in ways that amazed even the scientists who had created them. The ancient technology they had discovered now served as the cornerstone of humanity's new defensive strategies. But even with this new power, there was no illusion about the scale of the battle ahead. This wasn't just about defending Earth, it was about proving to the galaxy that humanity, though young, was a force that should never be underestimated. Days before the alien fleet's arrival, the Resistance launched a series of surprise strikes. Their aim was not to destroy, at least, not yet, but to create chaos within the alien ranks. Small skirmishes took place in the skies above, but it was the coordinated ground assaults that proved the most effective. Humanity's soldiers, once overwhelmed by the alien technology, now fought with precision, exploiting every weakness they had discovered in the alien ships. The tactics were bold, daring, and often reckless, but they worked. Each small victory, each skirmish won, sent ripples through the alien fleet. Humanity was no longer waiting for the aliens to make their move. They were now the aggressors. But the true test was yet to come. The alien fleet, now in full force, arrived in Earth's orbit, dwarfing the planet's defenses. These ships were unlike any humanity had ever seen. They were massive, with gleaming dark surfaces that seemed to absorb the light around them. Weapons capable of wiping entire cities from the map hung like a threat over Earth's fragile defenses. The aliens had come not just to conquer but to end the fight once and for all. They believed that this final assault would be the one that would crush humanity's will to fight. And yet, humanity had one more trick up its sleeve. Riley's team had been working on something even more dangerous, more devastating than anything they had developed before. A weapon not built on technology alone, but on a deep understanding of alien systems. Humanity had learned their enemy's language, their tactics, their weaknesses, and now, they had found a way to turn the alien fleet's greatest strength into its fatal flaw. The weapon was simple in its execution but complex in its design. It was a signal, a pulse, one that would overload the alien ship's internal systems. It wasn't designed to destroy, but to disrupt, to take the most powerful fleet in the galaxy and send it into chaos. The Resistance had one chance to fire it, one shot at redemption. The world's forces gathered, the countdown ticking toward the final moment. Earth's fate was no longer in the hands of governments or military leaders. It rested with the Resistance. The pulse would be deployed from the surface, aimed directly at the heart of the alien fleet. Riley and his team knew the risks. If it worked, the aliens would be crippled, their fleet rendered powerless. If it failed, humanity would be wiped out in a matter of hours. The tension in the command center was unbearable. Every eye was on the screen, every mind focused on the mission. The weapon was ready. Riley gave the signal, and the pulse was launched. Time seemed to stretch as the signal cut through space, traveling faster than anything humanity had ever created. It hit the alien fleet, and for a moment, nothing happened. The ships hovered in eerie silence. Then, the first ship began to tremble. The second, then the third. Each ship shuddered as its internal systems overloaded. Lights blinked out, weapons misfired, and the once mighty fleet was thrown into complete disarray. The aliens, who had once been so sure of their victory, now found themselves caught in a storm of their own making. Their communication systems were gone, their control over their ships slipping away. The Resistance launched their final assault, raining down everything they had left. The alien fleet, unable to regroup, began to fall, one by one. The war, which had seemed so hopeless just weeks before, was now turning in humanity's favor. As Earth's forces watched the alien ships retreat, their pride and confidence shattered. The world erupted in a chorus of cheers. The impossible had been done. Humanity had fought back not just with weapons, but with courage, unity, and the will to survive. But even as they celebrated, Riley knew the truth. This was only one battle in a much larger war. The aliens would regroup, and they would return. But the message was clear. Humanity had proven that they would never be a species to be taken lightly. They had shown the galaxy that they could stand up to the most powerful forces in the universe and win. The victory wasn't just a triumph of technology or strength, it was the victory of the human spirit. And with that, the aliens would know Earth was no longer theirs for the taking.